So it's another good reason to stay tuned to the chat.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you for attending the Urban League of Portland one of two. My name is Justice Raji. I am the director of the Reimagine Oregon, and I will be tonight's moderator. Before we get started, I want to thank our community partners for supporting tonight's forum. Tonight, we will feature candidates running for 3rd District Congressional Representative. We are joined by Ricardo Barajas, Nolan Bilenga, Representative Maxine Dexter, Eddie Morales, who's also currently, and Rachel Rand. Please note that all candidates running for this race were invited by either they had a scheduling conflict, declined to participate, or didn't respond to our outreach efforts. All candidates are here to highlight their campaign proposals and answer any questions related to our community. For tonight's event, we will do the opening statements, questions, and closing statements. We start in alphabetical order and rotate throughout the sections. Although we hope the forum will be an exciting and informative event, we also want it to be an orderly and respectful one. All defamatory, abusive, profane, threatening, offensive, or hate speech are strictly prohibited. Candidates that engage in this behavior will be removed from the forum. Here are a few ground rules for our candidates and also for you, our viewers, to know what's ahead. Number one, for our candidates, please remain muted if you are not answering a question. This is important for audio and also for the focus of the video, so we can keep you in the frame. Please do not forget this. Each candidate will have 2 minutes for their opening statement. We will ask you to deliver, I will, your moderator, ask you and say your name before your time so you'll know when you're ready. When questions are asked, each candidate will have 3 minutes to respond with no rebuttals. We will ask 3 questions total, time permitting. After the questions are complete, each candidate will have 3 minutes to deliver a closing statement. Again, as with the opening statements, I will let you know right beforehand when it's your turn to speak and share your statement. Please be courteous and conscientious of time and your fellow candidates. Throughout the forum when speaking, if you are within 30 seconds of your allotted time, our staff will send you a notification. If you go over time, we will send a chat to let you know the time is up. If you persist in going over time, you will be muted. And with that, we can get started. So we will begin opening statements. You each have 2 minutes to introduce yourselves. We will start with Ricky.
Good evening. Thank you for having me. Thank you for everyone who's joining to listen to all of our fantastic ideas for running for 3rd Congressional District. Again, my name is Ricardo Barajas. You can refer to me as Ricky. My political experience or public service experience varies. I volunteered for Hillary Clinton in 2016 and President Biden in 2020. I organized for Barbara Boxer and Dianne Feinstein, 2 senators from California. And ever since moving to Portland in 2017, I've been politically active and involved in my community with engaging in small communities and small business owners. The reason I'm running for the 3rd Congressional District, we see a change in the next 10 years, in the next 5 years, next year. I'm very passionate about running for my community and my city. I've always advocated for young leaders to step up and run. We do need a new leader in Congress. We do need leaders who are passionate about doing the right thing, the right job. We need people who are in love with the people, not corporate greed, interest, money, or fame. People keep asking me why you keep running. It's hard, isn't it? It is hard to run. But something inside me keeps telling me that I can do better in my community. I do bring real solutions to issues around the community and the country. I want to have the opportunity to explain and share my values with everyone and engage in an open dialogue with everyone. Thank you for having me again.
Thank you, Ricky. Nolan Bilinga, it is now your turn, and your time starts now.
Perfect. Thank you so much for having me here. My name is Nolan Bilinga. I'm 26 years old. It's usually the first thing that people notice about me is that I'm young, but I got a few gray hairs on my head. It's kind of wild. I'd say my favorite story that I like to tell comes down to Eastern Oregon. I used to live in Pendleton, Oregon before I came to Portland. And during the George Floyd protests, right, we were setting up marches in Pendleton. And at that portion of time, we were able to bring together even like right-wing folks to the table to talk about racial injustices. And at the end of the day, the Umatilla County Commissioners, conservative folks, they ended up putting out a proclamation saying, hey, we're going to dedicate, this to solving racial injustices. And so they've taken action to do what they can here and there, and so there's progress that's made. And so through that, I learned that we can build bridges between people. We can lift up Americans at the same time. And we don't have to just continue to divide people and throw names at people and do all the divisive stuff. I think that's, I'd say a lot of people agree with me on this, that money dominates politics completely. I think Ricky said it, too, talking about money in politics. And people end up like paid actors where they're voting on things that I don't even think they believe in, and now you see folks that they're trying to ban TikTok and do whatnot and other things. I don't want to see free speech go. I believe in democracy, and I think that we have a lot more work to do to actually uplift the values that we hold within our own party too. People have experienced within our party, within the other party, Americans have lost faith in the system. So I am doing the best I can to try to have some kind of means to fix that problem.
Thank you, Nolan Bilinga. Representative Dexter, it is now your turn, and your time starts now.
Great. Thank you so much. I really appreciate the leagues doing this and hosting this conversation. My name is Maxine Dexter. I am a mom, physician, and state representative. As a pulmonary and critical care physician, I've spent over 15 years taking care of patients in Congressional District 3, looking at science, finding solutions to their issues. And what I found is that many of the issues that I need to address have nothing to do with the healthcare I can offer, but more to do with housing, income insecurity, food insecurity. I see firsthand how so many Oregonians are struggling to live healthy lives because of bad policy. I see it when I let a child's parent know that they've overdosed unintentionally from a fentanyl overdose, or when our diabetics are in ketoacidosis in the emergency room because they can't afford their insulin, or a houseless person can't heal because they don't have a place to do so. That's why I ran for the Oregon State Legislature in 2020. It's because I know I can do more to help people, and I have. Since joining the State House, I'm so sorry about the background noise, the game just ended. Since joining the State House, I led the charge successfully to secure the country's strongest abortion protections. And we passed budgets to allow Oregon to require utilities to reduce greenhouse gases. We passed historic investments in housing and to address homelessness. We have been working hard, and I have been proud to do that work. I'm also not naive about what's going on in Washington. Right now, right-wing extremism is really threatening our rights and our environment and our democracy. That's why we must elect a proven leader, someone who has shown they know how to listen, lead, and get things done, and work across the aisle to do it. I've done it for 2 decades as a physician. I've done it for for my House district, and I'll do it for CD3. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Representative Dexter. Eddie, it is now your turn, and your time starts now.
Hi, my name is Eddie Morales, and I'm a 6-year city councilor here in Gresham. I'm also a small business owner and a nonprofit leader, national nonprofit leader. I also am the secretary of the board of Planned Parenthood for the Columbia-Willamette Valley. But really, my story starts with my mother, who came to this country in the trunk of a car, and my 8 siblings who came to this country in the backseat of strangers' cars. And my mother made that sacrifice because she wanted a better life for us. When I was 6 years old, we left Los Angeles and came here to Oregon. My mother was fleeing domestic violence. In Oregon, I was the first in my family to graduate high school. I was also able to go to college. I went through the entire public education system here from elementary school through college. The K through 12 was within the district. In Oregon, I also lost 2 brothers to gun violence, and I lost a sister to opioid addiction. These are the reasons why I wake up every day wanting to make concrete improvements in people's lives. And this is why I dedicated the last 25 years of my life to organizing in Oregon, across the country, and in Washington, D.C. On the Gresham City Council, I've been able to address things like multi-generational affordable housing. I've also helped to lower gun violence and crime by 30%, and help bring good paying jobs with benefits, and jobs that people can retire with dignity. I want to continue that work throughout the district, throughout the state of Oregon, and throughout the country, and that's why I'm running for Congress.
Thank you, Eddie. Ms. Rand, it is now your turn, and your time starts now.
Thank you. My name is Rachel Lydia Rand. I am a transgender jazz musician, multi-instrumentalist, and software engineer. I grew up in Portland. Before joining the Navy and playing music in the Navy for 7 years, I rode my bike 30 miles a day for 2 years, going from Selwood to Beaverton. I got involved in the climate change thing from biking around and seeing in a sea of cars, and it's very disorienting seeing a sea of cars like that when you're being so propelled by your own power, all these carbon emissions and all that. And that was a long time ago, and I've gone on to commute for most of my life by bicycle. In the Navy, I played music for Hillary Clinton, Bill Clinton. I played on aircraft carriers. I played improvised jazz for admirals regularly. Played at the NATO building. Traveled to Africa and South America. I got out of the Navy and lived in cars for 3 years, and then ultimately on the streets for a year. My brand of jazz music was not selling, and while on the streets, I taught myself software engineering through the discipline of collision detection and the math of 3D environments. So I'm a climate change activist with a basis in math and engineering now, and I've gone on to have a 20-year career in software. This is my third time running for this office. I ran in 2018 and 2020 against Representative Earl Blumenauer, and I have much respect for him and would like to continue his work. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Rand. Now we will begin the question portion of our forum. Each candidate has 3 minutes to respond to each question. The question is also in the chat for our participants here. I will call on you or say your name prior so you know that it is your turn to respond. And now I will read the question. As inflation rates continue to rise, many families in our district are feeling the financial strain. How do you plan to address the challenges posed by inflation and ensure that working families have access to affordable goods and services, particularly in communities disproportionately impacted by economic disparities? We'll start with Ricky, then we'll go to Nolan Balenga, Representative Dexter, Ms. Rand, and Eddie. And the next question, we'll change that order. So we'll begin. Ricky, your time starts now.
Thank you for the question. I think inflation is obviously an important issue for just not our community and district, but across the country. As we've seen the inflation tick down, but tick back up, we do need leaders in there to support President Biden in doing what they can to reduce inflation and minimize the burden that we're feeling. I think also as we're out of the COVID era in some sense, where businesses were struggling because of shortages or other reasons. Now we do have the economy is back and running, so we shouldn't have any large businesses, food market, food chains upping up the prices, because that's just not right. We have to make sure that we provide resources for the low class and middle class, and also make sure that we cap certain things in the market, especially at the gas pump. Gas prices have, of course, trickled down, but they're trickling back up. President Biden did attempt to cap gas prices last year, but of course it wasn't passed because a lot of Republicans oppose it. So we have to make sure that as far as my ideas or my solutions would be definitely addressing the concern with tax credits, making sure we lower the costs, invest in the middle class. The Inflation Reduction Act did great wonders. I think we were to pass another bill close to that to make sure that people are affording goods, food, the basic necessity. The middle class can survive. This is not going to just stop there. The housing crisis is out of control. We have to make sure in the next 2-3 years that government does the job that we require them to do, which is build homes, be proactive, not be reactive. I think we need to stop and let Vanguard and our other private businesses or companies have a huge land, build homes, but up the prices. That's just not fair for the communities that we live in. So we have to make sure the next person that goes into Congress and represents CD3 knows the struggles from the people, knows the solution, and see what we can do to have that trickle-down effect from Washington down to Portland. Thank you for the question.
Thank you, Ricky. Nolan Bilenga, it is now your turn, and your time starts now.
Thank you. You know, I think most people, if you're just a normal person, you've heard probably 1,000 times the rich get richer, the poor get poorer. I think that inflation is certainly part of that. If you've seen, if we just take the last 24 years, in 2000, I don't know if most people know this, but in 2000, the most wealthy person in the world was Bill Gates. He has about $60 billion total. And today, you know, there's 21 people that have at least $70 billion. And that's been with both Democrat and Republican administrations and Congresses and Senates and whatnot. So I think that the issue is that we kind of have a mixture of both sides allowing stuff like this happening. The issue is we need to make it so things are affordable. I know they tried with the Inflation Reduction Act, whatnot, but prices are still rising, and I think everybody sees it. We talk about taxing the rich as a talking point. And I think that's true. That should be the goal, to tax the rich to try to even out some of the playing field with inequality. But the issue is most people don't even know how the rich avoid taxes in the first place. And so I don't even know if our politicians know how the rich avoid taxes in the first place. The rich go and they borrow off of shares, which ends up as non-taxable, in a sense, what they can use to spend to buy things. They don't make income the same way that most people do. So you've got to go more into the actual things that we're talking about, you know, the tax codes, and change them, because they're getting away with it, and the people that are in office are letting them get away with it. I think that's really the main problem. You know, it seems to me that every policy that both sides implement is really allowing business to get bigger. And so during the pandemic, we had an issue where you know, there was rightfully so that we were trying to help people, but at the same time, what did we do? We closed down a lot of small businesses and allowed a lot of big businesses where the rich own these giant corporations to stay open. And so those businesses like Walmart and Amazon just profited off of that particular thing, and these CEOs just got rich over it. And we allowed it to happen. So I think that inflation comes around a whole bunch of issues encompassing together. You can't really just end inflation or make the money go backwards. People know that money can't become, you know, worth more again, generally in economics. You know, I'd say lastly that when you talk about my generation, I'm 26 years old, and housing has gone up exponentially. I will never be able to afford a house if I just go by the basic means of trying to do things. And nobody my age will ever be able to afford a house. We're going to be renting for the rest of our lives. So like the issues to me just seem like it's we just have people that are enabling it to happen. So that's the end of my deal.
Thank you, Nolan Bilenga. Representative Dexter, it is now your turn, and your time starts now.
Thank you so much. This is one of the pinnacle issues that I really want to address as a congressperson. As somebody who grew up in a working class family, only is here by the empowerment that a union job gave me at 16, allowing me to move out of a really traumatizing family environment. I wouldn't be here if it weren't for opportunity that is no longer accessible to people. I had a good public education, affordable higher education, and a union job that allowed me to pay in a city environment my way with affordable housing. And to Nolan's point, it is not any longer possible for people who don't have savings to buy homes, not because they aren't willing to do everything they can to sacrifice it, but because they can't get access to capital and they can't find anything affordable, and that has to change. Food and shelter should be something that every person can expect to have securely available in the community of their choice. And as housing and homelessness chair, that's been what my whole job has been focused on for the last 2 years. We can do this, And we must, as a federal government, government's role is to do the things that people in local jurisdictions cannot do for themselves. And this is absolutely one of those. I hear it every day from my patients, from our community, from my constituents. People are worried about their kids getting sick, them getting sick and bankrupting their family when they're living paycheck to paycheck. They're worried about their children's safety with gun violence in their schools. And as a mother who's experienced that in a different way from afar while my child was in a lockdown with an active shooter, I think that that also is really important because we have too much violence in our BIPOC communities and we are not addressing that in a meaningful way. And inflation and the cost of first responders is part of that. We are not investing in the right ways for our communities. So the ways that I would address it, we need to increase opportunity for organizing with unions. We need to make housing and food security a guaranteed right as Americans, as all people who live within our borders. We need revenue reform. We do need to tax the rich and spread that differently. We need access to capital, especially for women-owned and BIPOC-owned small businesses, and allow people to get housing. And that is where I'll end it. I want to be respectful of the time. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Representative Dexter. Ms. Rand, it is now your turn, and your time starts now.
Thank you, Justice Ritchie. Yeah, income disparity and inflation. There's obviously a lot of suffering going on out there, especially for the younger generations. We need to ensure that people are getting good food, clothing, and shelter. Anything that we do, in my opinion, to help out this economy monetarily is going to create this situation where if you just give people money, like I was asking my roommate today, what would you do if you just had $2 million? And he immediately said, I'd travel, and you know that equals plane flights and car trips and staying in hotels and you know having people waiting on you in hotels and restaurants and building airplanes and building cars, and all this is bad for climate change. Oil is a substance we pave our roads and shingle our houses with as much as it is a fuel, and it's a finite resource and it will end. My opinion is that we're headed into a very different world here, coming up pretty quickly, and if we don't reduce our population, we're going to wind up in world wars with Mother Nature reducing our population. I think we're all limited and not free in that, and that we're all under the command of Mother Nature, and that we've reached some serious limits here, and this oil-based economy is coming to an end. I believe if I get elected to Congress, I'm going to introduce a bill to ensure that everyone gets food stamps, no questions asked, at least everyone in households under $60,000 a year. I think that a decreasing population will have less need for housing. We can just stop building new housing and figure out a better way to distribute housing. So that's what I'm running on. Oh, it says I have a minute left here. I'm going pretty quick. I wanted to make sure all that was said because it's important stuff. So, you know, it's kind of an unpopular thing. People are scared to get on board with me. I'm a software engineer. I have eliminated jobs at companies through automation, and I see a lot more of that coming up. I think we're going to be able to eliminate middle management jobs. Those people are driving to work. In 2018, I was running, and 2020, I was running for this office on the platform of working from home in order to drive less and make a carbon savings, and that was tested worldwide, and it resulted in about an 8% carbon savings. And I think we need to get back to those times here and reduce our population. I'm suggesting that we have 1 child per every 2 women.
Thank you, Ms. Rand. Eddie, it is now your turn, and your time starts now.
Thanks, Justice Raji. You know, growing up, I grew up working class poor. and my mother brought us up by exchanging childcare for us to have a place to live. When we first moved here, we moved to Woodburn, which was a farm worker community, and she brought us up by taking care of farm workers' kids and then making farm workers' lunches. She quickly learned that she could exchange those skills for housing. And so I grew up moving around quite a bit and pretty housing insecure. And sometimes we lived on someone's couch. Sometimes we lived in someone's dining room with a curtain, and that was our home. And sometimes we were lucky enough to have an extra bedroom. So I know what it's like to, have the emergency room be your healthcare plan, or what it's like to, rely on SNAP and food stamps to get food. Um, and my very first thing that I did when I was, and 25 years ago when I was organizing, was that a group of farm worker women came and spoke to us on campus and said that they weren't getting paid fair wages and that they had horrible working conditions, no water, no breaks, bathrooms, or shade. And in my freshman year in school, I led a boycott. And I remember thinking when we won, if these undocumented farm worker women can get better wages and get better benefits than any worker in this country can. And so I've dedicated the last 25 years of my life to organizing with working people in this country. Part of what I think needs to happen is I know that housing is, and we all know that housing is one of the most expensive cost for people in this country. And I've worked to create affordable housing here in Gresham, uh, uh, over 400 units actually. And some of these are multi-generational housing with 3 and 4 bedrooms so that people can live together with their aunts, uncles, grandmas, sometimes kids. These homes have wraparound services that help people save and go towards their first down payment of a home. So I think we need to continue to increase our supply of affordable housing and homeownership programs so that people can start building equity for multi-generations. The other is we got to lower, some of the burden that people have. Nolan talked about student debt, and I think we have, ever since I started organizing, I always said that education should be free, and it should be a right. And I've organized to help increase funding for programs like Gear Up and Trio. Is that warning?
Thank you, Eddie. We're going to move to question 2. Considering Oregon's efforts to secure funding through the Federal CHIPS Act to support semiconductor fabrication plants in our state, how do you plan to advocate for equitable access to these potential resources, especially for communities historically marginalized or underserved? On this question, we're going to start with Nolan Bilenga, followed by Representative Dexter, Ms. Rand, Eddie, and then Ricky. So we'll start Nolan Bilenga. Your time starts now.
Awesome. I think that's trying to do stuff for communities and whatnot. It takes coalitions and it takes gathering people together. And the truth is that there's no candidate out there that's going to know or have any plan that is perfect for everything. So that's where you actually have to go to folks and talk to those organizations and figure out how are you going to do things. I know the question is talking about Federal CHIPS Act, so I want to read it one more time, to support semiconductor fabrication plants in our state. And I'll tell you the truth is I'm not the most familiar person with semiconductor and fabrication plants, but I'm 100% willing to go and look at anything there is in on it. Right after this, I'll go and start researching and figuring out exactly how I can start investing in communities. And you're talking about the marginalized communities that are underserved. People talking about BIPOC communities, LGBTQ and whatnot, and other folks around. So what it takes is building those coalitions and going out into communities and talking to people. And that's how campaigning is done in general. They talk about with campaigning, or when you're campaigning, you are going to the community and you're learning, how can I help you? And how can I help these folks as well? And it's just one piece of the puzzle. I think that for that in general, is that there's never going to be anything done if we don't take money out of politics in particular. And this has kind of been the theme of what I've been campaigning on lately, is taking money out of politics, because it always seems like it's the people with $1 million in their war chest that have already kind of been allocated the money before you even get into an election. Before they become the candidate, they probably had those conversations and been somewhat allocated money, not 100%, but what you have is folks that are tied down and they will only vote the direction of what the special interests want. And we have to take the money out completely out of politics in order to start solving problems such as that, right? I think that you've got super PACs, you've got the 501cs, you've got corporations and things like that. And what we end up having is with these super PACs, and by the way, not to throw anybody under the bus, I'm not naming names, but super PACs are providing campaign staff that is literally writing scripts for people. So what you have is that candidates are literally paid actors. They're not their own opinions. They're the opinions of the super PACs that have written the scripts for them and are allowing them to say, or telling them, we're going to give you the money if you say the things that you agree with us on, essentially, or you deemed to agree with them on. You never really know. And I think that's kind of where the issues that we have in Congress are spawning from today. But, I'll leave it at that. That's my answer for that. I will learn about it, and I am willing to learn whatever there is to learn in order to solve the issue.
Thank you, Nolan Bilinga. Representative Dexter, it is now your turn, and your time starts now.
Thank you so much, Justice and the League, for this question. Really grateful to have gotten to work in partnership with Representative Bynum, hopefully soon Congresswoman Bynum, on the CHIPS Act and how we implemented it here in Oregon. Some of the major ways that we make sure that it creates opportunity for community members, especially those most marginalized and BIPOC community members who haven't traditionally had first right to these opportunities, is making sure, one, that there's free childcare on site. Without question, that has to happen, and it's built into this process right now, thanks to the Biden administration's leadership. Two, apprenticeships must be accessible and prioritized for women and BIPOC community members. We have to have partnerships with local school districts, with the community colleges, to make sure that there's scholarship support to allow a pipeline of ongoing job creation. We're seeing this in our state already, but we have to double down on that. Middle school, a lot of people get interested in different parts of science and math and different things, and a lot of kids are also turned off and they don't see themselves in those roles. We have to change that narrative earlier on in elementary school, and really challenging kids to see themselves in the roles that can be created with these opportunities. Prioritizing, again, scholarships and those opportunities for the community and the most marginalized in the community. And then we have to create leadership opportunities like business leadership and apprenticeships across the country, so that we can mix and learn from each other and bring those good ideas back to the community. Finally, we've got to elect people into office who have these insights, and the marginalized community members who don't get to lead, they need to be in leadership and show us how to do this best. And really appreciate the conversation, because this is how we build economic security for our state.
Thank you, Representative Dexter. Ms. Rand, it is now your turn, and your time starts now.
Thank you. Semiconductors are very important. It's allowing us to communicate this evening without driving to each other. And that's a carbon savings. In the 2020 election, I sent letters to the upper management at Intel in our city, and I did not receive any responses from them. In January of this year, I had several emails with the Army Corps of Engineers to try to talk with them about the Bonneville Dam and the status of our structures on the river, and they ended up giving me the cold shoulder. I sent the CEO, Rodney McMullen, the CEO of Kroger, an email a couple months ago to discuss my ideas on the grocery store. payment systems and pick his brain about how things are working there, because I think food is an important thing, and that ties in with semiconductors. The fact is, I need your vote to get into a position of power to talk with these people. My significant music experience and my brushes with fame um, afford me an ability to talk intelligently about these subjects, and I've been diligently writing about politics every day for a decade now, and I came up with the idea of running for U.S. representative and vice president in 2003, and I've been working towards this since I was on the streets, and I'm on the other side of all that work now, and I'm claiming success and how I've educated myself along the way. Again, these people, I don't know, for whatever reason, aren't interested in talking with me. But I think my ideas are spot on how to drive this emerging new economy. Um, Perhaps I've said as much as I need to here. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Rain. Eddie, it is now your turn, and your time starts now.
Right. Well, just as Reggie, I got ran out of time on the last one, but part of my idea around how you help with economic inequality and just the pain that people are feeling from how expensive it is also to provide good paying jobs with benefits, and so that people can retire with dignity. On this topic of the CHIPS Act and semiconductors, we have um, um, we have microchip here in Gresham, and it's been here for about 20 years. And when it started with 60 jobs, and in those 20 years, it grew to 900 jobs. One of the things that I was able to work on was a few years ago, we were able to provide almost $50 million tax abatement to microchip to do an expansion. And in that process of that expansion, it ended up providing an opportunity for carpenters in our region to be able to get good family paid union jobs. So the carpenters unions are the ones building this out. What's great about projects that are this large is that someone could come in as an apprenticeship and actually fulfill a 5-year apprenticeship program by going through a project like this from beginning to end. By making that initial investment, we recently were the second place in the entire country to receive a grant from the federal government of $72 million to expand this field. We're going to be creating 300 more family wage jobs with benefits in our community here. As you know, where I live in the eastern part of this district, in East Portland and Gresham, we're one of the most densely and diverse parts of our state. And we are ensuring that these jobs stay in our community. And we're working with our community college to make sure that we're pulling people into these jobs. What's great about the microchip jobs in particular is that they're developing the types of chips that keep our toasters running, planes, motorcycles, and don't necessarily require someone to have gone to a 4-year university to do these works. They're good paying jobs with manufacturing. I want to continue to take this program and expand it so that we have better paying jobs in our community, and we're building talent here locally.
Thank you, Eddie. Ricky, it is now your turn, and your time starts now.
Thank you for the question. I want to say I agree with a lot of what Representative Dexter mentioned. I think the two good things about this bill is job stays here in America, made in America, and they're high-paying jobs. And I think this kind of correlates or also connects with if we can expand this program to keep the money in Oregon and keep getting more grants, we can kind of reduce and eliminate homelessness. The problem with homelessness is two solutions that we can do: house them and provide them with skills, training to be part of this program, to be part of this apprenticeship, take these jobs. I believe when Intel came here a couple of decades ago, they promised that all these jobs would go to Oregonians. That's not true. And most people are coming with visas, work visas, which is great. But however, the job should have stayed here in Oregon. for Oregonians. So that was a misleading statement from Intel, which now even them, having people come from other parts of the world, they're renting, buying, and raising the cost of living instead of those jobs should have stayed here. So I think we can enhance this, provide the skills and opportunity, but also I think this is a great opportunity for those who want to have an opportunity in this job to create the chips at those chips in our state. I would focus mainly on housing the homeless, get them the skills trainings they need on a road to recovery, and get them back on the workforce, because that would eliminate multiple problems: homeless, addiction, and it would raise our economy overall as a whole. Thank you.
Thank you, Ricky. We're going to move to question 3. The city of Portland finalized a 15-year settlement with the state to clean up the Columbia Slough, the 31-mile stretch of waterways between Fairview Lake and the Willamette River. The Columbia, I think it might be slow, was a local dumping ground for surrounding industrial and agricultural sites until the 1970s. How will you ensure the Department of Environmental Quality will hold industrial and agricultural companies accountable to the environmental protection policies to ensure safe waterways and green spaces? On this question, we'll start with Representative Dexter, Ms. Rand, Eddie, Ricky, and then Nolan Bilinga. With that, I'll say Representative Dexter, your time starts now.
Great. Thank you so much. Again, a really important issue, and especially because it impacts the folks who are most exposed to this area, who also unfortunately tends to be our most economically disadvantaged members of our communities. It's contaminating our groundwater. There's huge impacts from this. I've been working with the EPA, really trying to address Portland Harbor, and this is a very related issue. This is industry's responsibility to clean up. We have federal guidelines for how to do that. We need to bring the infrastructure home to get the cleanup done and to help enforce the companies who have created this environmental risk to the health and safety of our communities. They need to help pay for the cleanup. It should not always be incumbent upon government to take leadership here. What we need to do is start taking leadership at the community level to help enforce the laws that are absolutely having been violated in the past. We have PFAS chemicals, those forever chemicals that have been released. I don't know exactly the makeup of the chemicals here. Some of them are incredibly hard to clear. And we also know that there's disproportionate health impacts, especially with cancer, bloodborne cancers, that we need to also make sure that the health impacts are addressed, not just the immediate cleanup, but the downstream health impacts, the costs to the quality of life, as well as the length of life for people who are exposed to these areas. And that takes a longer term investment.
Thank you, Representative Dexter. Ms. Rand, it is now your turn, and your time starts now.
Thank you. I'm not up to the details with every last detail about the waterway here in Portland. In the 2018 election, the Willamette Week interview that I did with Representative Earl Blumenauer, I had a very short time to speak, and I mentioned the nitrogen runoff and what a problem that is. The fact is, industrialization creates a lot of waste, and every time we buy a car and drive in a car, we are contributing to that waste, and that is the demand that is driving all of this. We didn't like wearing those masks in the pandemic. I know I didn't like wearing them, but the fact is, in China and those Asian countries known as the world's factory, they are wearing masks to filter out pollution. And it makes me kind of sad to hear us talking about the politics of the pollution around here when it's so bad over there they can barely breathe, and they're making all these products for us. Is the solution to start making the products over here? No, I don't think so. The World Factory makes sense to have that availability of parts all in one place. It's a logistical thing that makes it more efficient than spreading these factories around all over the world. It's a complicated engineering problem, and I think a lot about how all these systems work together. And I would like to be elected to Congress and hopefully make it to vice president one day to talk with our upper politicians and business leaders around the nation of how to solve these things and address our climate crisis around the world. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Rand. Eddie, it is now your turn, and your time starts now.
Yeah. The Columbia Slough really runs along the borders of the areas that disproportionately are impacting people of color, lower income communities. I grew up, in Blue Lake and playing in the Slough. Locally here, we have received grants from Congressman Burl Blumenauer to treat our waste and water treatment plants to ensure that, as we're pushing water back into the Columbia, that we are making sure it is the cleanest possible. So one, I think we can continue to draw down federal dollars like this along the cities that are in the Columbia River to ensure that we prevent the ongoing pollution there. And like others on this call said, I think we need to make sure that we are holding corporations accountable who have created this mess in the cleanup of these toxic areas. We also need to ensure that the Environmental Protection Agency is fully funded, and we need to protect it. And we need to make sure that the cuts that the Trump presidency did get undone in this area. We also need to ensure that when we're bringing infrastructure dollars to the district, that we use it to mitigate pollution and to address climate change. I think we need to really encourage, I think, with federal dollars, cross-government cooperation, between our cities and our waterways. And so, yes, this is a huge priority. In East County, we have felt the impacts of climate change already. We are constantly at the forefront of our forest fires here. A few years ago, we were the hottest place on the planet with the heat dome, and it took over 100 lives in our community. And in the winter storms recently, our communities were without power for 3 to 4 weeks sometimes. And so, as I think about climate change and how, and the Green New Deal, which I fully support, I think this is an opportunity for us to really hit reset on our economy, on our social structures here, and make one that is more just.
Thank you, Eddie. Ricky, it is now your turn, and your time starts now.
Thank you. Just reading this question and listening to my peers, I just think of one thing that comes to my mind: the Flint water crisis in 2016. This can happen in our community, and it's worrisome. So I think, I've always talked about how would I approach solutions and how I will lead by being proactive. I think we need to definitely have a group of people coming into our state Department of Environment, the EPA, FEMA, Department of Transportation, to figure out how can this be done in a timely manner and with minimum effects on our community. I think that we need to hold in industries accountable by having strict regulations and having hefty fines if they don't follow our fines. Republicans and Donald Trump don't believe in regulations. They want to deregulate everything and just let private industries go wild. That doesn't solve anything. It creates more problems. It creates more headaches. It creates billions of dollars of damage. So I think if we were to take approach now, lead now, we can have this resolved in a few years. And this can start locally in our backyard and eventually provide a pathway for the rest of the country to fix certain projects that need to be fixed before things go worse? Thank you for the question.
Thank you, Ricky. Nolan Balenga, it is now your turn, and your time starts now.
Thank you. You know, I think that there's a little bit of a theme that people have been saying, and I think the simple answer to this is that we need to enforce the law. And I think when it comes to environment, it sucks. As a young person, I know all the folks that are in my classes and whatnot. They had a forum that was set up by an environmental class just a little bit ago that we went to. And I just don't think the people that are in office are really that serious about the environment. I think they use it to get votes, while the young people are all out, you know, saying like, do something, do something. When are you going to do something? And we've done nothing. You know, for the Green New Deal folks, the people that support the Green New Deal, if you remember the last time that it was in Senate, is what was it? All the Senate Democrats just voted present. They said we're not going to do it, you know, but it was all a, you know, a campaign tactic to get into office, right? So I just think, when are we actually going to start making policy that is going to help the environment? And when are we going to enforce the law? The funny thing to me, when it comes to money in politics and the parties, you know, staying in power and whatnot, is we pushed out a candidate, and I know people will hate me saying this, but there's a candidate right now for president. His name is RFK Jr., right? This man spent his entire life litigating, doing exactly what we're talking about, to protect environmental areas and for the tribes and whatnot all over the place. And we just call him a conspiracy theorist and throw him to the side. I think that's wild to me that we do that. He did that as his job. In 2015, before Trump was elected, he was on the front page of like The Issue or something saying, RFK Jr., our last chance for the environment. And yet now the Democratic Party is just throwing slander that direction, right? And I'm not saying, you know, you're making an endorsement or saying go vote for him or what, but I think that proves the point 100% that the people that are in office don't care at all about the environment. It's a talking point completely. And I don't think anything will ever get done about it, ever. I hate to say it, until the money is taken out of politics and we stop using these things as just talking points for these people with, you know, the super PACs and 501Cs to play the strings behind the scenes and give them scripts so that they can maintain power. That's my issue. You know, we think, you would think, for another issue is mental health. You would think that Oregon is a good state for mental health. Well, we're actually one of like the worst three in the nation for mental health, as progressive as we are, right? We're behind Missouri, Texas, Alabama, Mississippi, all the right-wing states. And we, for the past decade, have just consistently been one of the worst states in the union, if not the worst state, for how blue we are. So let's start actually taking the money out of politics, getting people in here who care about these issues, and then start passing the policy to enforce the law.
Thank you, Nolan Balenga. We have completed our question portion of the forum. We will begin with closing statements. Each of you have 3 minutes. We will start with Ms. Rand, followed by Eddie, Representative Dexter, Nolan Balenga, and Ricky will close us out on closing statements. So with that, Ms. Rand, if you're ready, your time can start now.
Thank you, Justice Raji. You know, I'm obviously about climate change here and fighting climate change. We all contribute to this problem, and you know, ideally we would fix things on the demand side. We would stop driving to restaurants, and we would stop driving to work, and we would buy less cars. This idea of a lithium-based economy where we have two long-range electric cars in our driveways and fast charging stations throughout the nation is a convenient idea that would allow us to continue taking vacations to the mountain and the beaches and other states and have a dinner with our relatives in states away. This all contributes to our climate problems and will ultimately it's just this compounding matter. I'm in this to be highly visible in Congress and hopefully as vice president to drive um, a change on the demand side here, to say that um, the problem with the demand side thing is that we can't give up our cars because we have to have a job, because we have to have a job so that we can afford to pay our mortgages. And there's people getting rich off of these things, owning these multiple properties. It's a complicated political problem, and I don't think it's just money in politics that's keeping us away from this. We definitely need a change up here in DC and in our political systems, and I hope to be a driving change in this. My website, trombone.com/politics, has extensive information on how I plan to address all these issues in a holistic manner. Um, you can just Google Rachel Lydia and you'll find me quick enough. I do political writing every day and will continue to do that for the rest of my life, probably. If I don't get elected this time around, I'm going to switch back over to a presidential campaign on the next day, on May 22nd. And I'm going to sell my house and go on tour for the next 4 years. So since I have a minute left here, I'll use a little bit more here. I mean, my original idea being on the streets was to have Oprah as president and me as vice president. I thought that would be a great team. I appreciate how public her battles with weight loss have been. I drank soda pop and gained 70 pounds from that and became pre-diabetic, and I had to do the tough work of losing weight and to learn how to address that. So it's not just these politics of laws and stuff, but there's personal stuff in this.
Thank you, Ms. Rand. Eddie, it is now your turn, and your time starts now.
First, I just want to say thank you, Justice Raji, and to the Urban League for putting this on, and to all of us who participated here today. Today you heard a lot about my personal story, my motivations, and my experience. You also heard about some of the things that I've gotten done, whether it was creating multi-generational affordable housing, helping to lower gun violence and crime in my community, as well as work that I've done across the country, which I didn't get to get into, but in Florida, I got to work with Desmond Reed to help restore voting rights for 1.5 million returning citizens. With Stacey Abrams for the last 10 years, I've got a chance to ensure people have the right to vote and help to flip Georgia. In Arizona, I worked there with immigrants to recall Russell Pierce and get rid of Joe Arpaio after they introduced Show Me Your Paper laws and tormented immigrants. In Ohio, I helped to work with the young people there to make sure that abortion was in the Constitution this last year. And I helped to create the United We Dream Network, which is a national organization that pushed for the DREAM Act in DACA, and helped to pass the Affordable Care Act nationally. I have the 25 years of experience of getting things done and organizing here and across the country. I have 6 years as an elected official, and I have a really broad coalition of people that are supporting me. I have the most labor support of anyone running for this campaign, from flight attendants to airline pilots to our letter carriers, our carpenters, and our teachers, the Oregon Education Association. And it's broad with like our Oregon Revolution and the Working Families Party and the Realtors. I will be on the doors. We're going to be hitting mail soon, and I think we're the first campaign up on TV, because we want to make sure that we're reaching every voter in this district at the grassroots level and in the way that they receive information. I hope that you will all support my campaign and that you'll join my broad coalition of organizers and organizations across the district to get it done. I will guarantee you that no one is going to act with more urgency, and no one has a lived experience, and no one's going to fight harder than I will to continue to deliver for this community in Washington, D.C. And so thank you. And my website is www.eddiemorales.com.
Thank you, Eddie. Representative Dexter, it is now your turn, and your time starts now.
Thank you again, Justice Raji and the Urban League for having this conversation today. It's just a privilege to have this opportunity to speak with everyone. I'm confident that my unique blend of personal experience and professional expertise, as well as my proven ability to get things done, and a working class background where economic mobility was truly an opportunity that I had, that I understand that I am on this precipice of privilege, that I need to pay it forward, and I'm committed to doing so. I am confident that my skill set will best serve the people of Congressional District 3. My campaign is built on a career of listening to and caring for our community and using my skills in consensus building and pragmatic problem solving to lead effective, lasting change. My why? I am a caregiver and I want to leave our community, our country, better than I found it. And for you, for my children, for all of our children, we have a lot of work to do to get to that point. My background as a physician is important because I see every day people from millionaires to houseless. And I understand, we take social histories. We have to understand whether they have childcare, whether they have insurance, whether they have housing. I see the impacts of policies in a very real way in a cross section of our community. And I've been in CD3 taking care of patients for over 15 years. I know the issues that people are struggling with, and I understand them in a very real way, in a different way that most people can, because I have this very personal exposure. I'm the only candidate who's been a lawmaker, who's proven I can and will get hard bills passed. I know how to work across party lines. I know how to focus on the outcomes that we need to see. We all want safe communities. We all want affordable housing and good public educations. We have much more that brings us together than divides us, and we need to focus on that as we really try to address the income inequity that we have right now. This is an important, influential seat in Congress, and it's important that the person who goes is going to work tirelessly for this community, and I will. I've been endorsed by a broad base of influential leaders, community groups, from former governors to over 20 current legislators, unions, the National Organization for Women, the Oregonian, community leaders like Andy Mendenhall at Central City Concern, the Gray Panthers. We have a lot of groups supporting us, and it's because I've established my effectiveness. I really hope that you'll send me to Congress, where I promise I will work as hard for you there as I do every day for my community currently. At MaxineForOregon.com. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Representative Dexter. Nolan Valenga, it is now your turn, and your time starts now.
Thank you, Justice Raji. I just want to say that, it's awesome when y'all put together something like this and you'll invite all the candidates and bring them on. Because, just from experience, lived experience, there's been other candidates that have experienced it. It's not just me. But there's a lot of forums, a lot of these gatherings that they don't invite everybody. They only invite the people that they see as the favorites, the people that they've already deemed are going to win before we even vote. So it's awesome that y'all do stuff like this. For me, I'm just going to tell you what I think, and to be fair, I think that most Americans that I talk to, at least, they agree with me. It might not be every single person that's of a particular Democratic Party, but I think most Americans agree with the things that I'm saying. They're sick of propaganda. They're sick of the hate and division in America. They're sick of people reading off scripts and lying to them. And before any of these elections, everybody tells you anyways they hate all the politicians. I don't want to be a politician, but now I am, apparently, because I'm running for office. But it's a thing where people are sick of it. They don't even want to vote. We have very low voting rates in this country, and it's risen because people are now hating each other. So it's time to tone that stuff down. It's time to stop, just calling people names constantly just because they voted for a certain person. I agree with a lot of the things in the Democratic Party, but I come from Pendleton, Oregon, conservative place. I know a lot of very good Republicans. I know people that voted for Trump, and they'll tell me that they voted for Trump for a particular reason. And I disagree with them, but I still see them taking care of the community around them and trying to do the best they can for the folks that are around them. So it's not fair to just start calling people blameless names. That being said, there are real issues. I set up marches like Black Lives Matter and whatnot back in the day when that was happening. And I see also a lot of young people that are upset when they see their government says, well, let's go support, give bombs to a country that's killing folks that we're also helping at the same time. It just seems like we're trying to play two sides of the same coin. And it's frustrating to just constantly watch that. I feel like I'm being lied to by the government every single time I look at the TV screen. I'm done with it. I'm going to tell people what I think, and I'm going to try to show love to everybody that's around me. I'll tell you the truth, but I'm going to try to show love to people too. And I think those are my values. I want to go and inspire young folks. I want to inspire people that are on the streets, that are homeless, help lift people up and get people out of poverty. And that's what we need to do. So that's the side that I'm on, is the side of trying to unite people and lift people up. I thank you all for allowing me to come here and talk, and I've had a great time.
Thank you, Nolan Bilinga. Ricky, it is now your turn, and your time starts now.
Well, thank you for having me, and it's been humbling to be here with you and everyone here in this panel to talk about our ideas and vision for CD3 and our country. I think, Nolan and I share a lot of things. I'm pretty sure he's heard it. I've heard it. Wait your turn. It's not your turn. Start from small, move up. We're living in critical times that if we're passionate about something, sky should be the limit. We shouldn't have to start small. We need to dream big. I know I'm running because I'm passionate about my community. I'm passionate about what I want to do, and I've been passionate for 80 years about running for office. This is not something that I just woke up and say, "Hey, I'm going to run for office." I've been passionate and preparing myself with my background in service, organizing for senators, my degree in political science. I live in downtown Portland, where I walk my dog and I see homeless people. And we need to bring passion into fixing that issue. We have to bring passion of addressing what's happening here in our city. We all have solutions, we all have ideas, but we need to look at what's practical and what's not. Housing should be affordable. We shouldn't have to wait another year, 2 years for housing to be affordable. One of my plans would be to make a first-time homeowners buy a house for $250,000. Imagine that, being a first-time owner. So Nolan and his generation doesn't have to wait 10 years. We can make that happen by passing strong, effective measures that a first-time owner can have a house for $250,000. That's incredible. Homeless, again, like I mentioned, we have to tackle it with passion and address the root cause of it and bring people out of the streets, help them with their mental health, and get them back in the workforce. And lastly, one of my biggest issues that I'm running for is immigration. We have a broken system that we keep seeing over and over, both left and right side, that they want to attempt to fix it, not fix it, vote on it, vote against it. But my plan that you won't see anywhere else is unique. Imagine if we contribute to our Latin partners to encourage people to stay, to empower those nations, and say, hey, you don't have to leave your country because your country is now safe. That will limit immigration. That will empower our neighboring countries. We spend so much money and time in the Middle East. Let's focus now on our counterpartners in southern border states and countries. I'm sorry. Thank you for your time. I encourage all of you to go to my website, barajas, 4 congress.com. Thank you and have a good evening.
Thank you, Ricky. As tonight's candidate forum comes to an end, I want to give special thanks to our partners at LNS Captioning and Open Signal for airing this forum. We thank the candidates for participating tonight and our community partners. I also want to highlight the importance of voting. The deadline to register to vote for the primary election is April 30th. and the primary election day is May 21st. Democracy only works when people vote. So get registered if you aren't and vote. To our audience, please remember that the Urban League is a nonprofit organization that relies upon donations and membership to be able to serve the community. Join our movement for justice and equity in Oregon by visiting our website at ulpdx.org. If you're able, I invite you to donate. Your support is an investment in our Black community and our robust wraparound programming that empowers communities and changes lives. Tonight's event was part of the Urban League series of virtual candidate forums for the primary election. Please visit ulpdx.org/2024 primary candidates forum to learn more about our series of events. If you need assistance voting or registering during the election season, staff at the Urban League are ready to talk with you. Reach out via the website, social media, or call 503-280-2600 for assistance. And I'll repeat that, 503-280-2600 for assistance. On behalf of the Urban League, President Nikinge Harmon Johnson, the Board of Directors, and all of our members, I thank you, our audience, for joining us tonight. I am Justice Raji, the Director of the Reimagine Oregon. Good night.